Welcome to Season 4 of Creatively Speaking, Food for Thought. I'm your host, Leanna Weller-Smith, founder and executive creative director of Weller-Smith Design. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Gary He. Gary is a James Beard award-winning photographer and food writer and author of McAtlas, a global guide to the Golden Arches. McAtlas is a visual social anthropology of the largest restaurant chain in the world. An independent work of journalism by Gary He, this project is neither endorsed nor sponsored by McDonald's Corporation. So I've been stalking Gary on Instagram since sometime last year when I came across his journey into self-publishing. So I was super excited when he had some space in his McAtlas delivery schedule to say yes to this recording. A little bit about the book. In McAtlas, Gary takes us beyond the Golden Arches of McDonald's to discover how the world's most famous fast food chain localizes its menu across the globe. Inspired by an eye-opening experience in Marrakesh during Ramadan, Gary embarked on this unique project, McAtlas, to capture the cultural diversity reflected in McDonald's menus. About this episode. So if you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you know I love a good self-publishing success story. But what intrigued me even more about Gary and his book were the logistics that were needed to pull off such an epic compilation of stories, facts, and photos. During the making of this book, he traveled to 50 plus countries and sampled McDonald's menus from across the globe, making this a planes, trains, and automobiles type of adventure. While we touch on interesting facts and stories throughout this episode, we really dig into the behind the scenes, the highs and lows, and the determination and grit that it took to bring his vision to fruition. In our conversation, we leave no stone unturned. We talk about how he used his award-winning photography and journalism talents, some trial and error, along with his professional connections to rally behind the creation of his artistic masterpiece, a burger-shaped book that's as delightful as it is insightful. Since its publication, McAtlas has had a great reception from mainstream media like CNN, the New York Times, and the New York Post. And it is available online and in bookstores like Kitchen Arts and Letters and Now Serving LA. So grab your headphones and maybe a Big Mac and join us for a lighthearted and inspiring conversation that celebrates creativity, passion, and the delicious world of global fast food culture. Let's dig in. Hey, Gary, welcome to Creatively Speaking. I am so excited to have you on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a stalker. We were talking right before we hit play. And, I'm just going to tell the audience a little bit about how I came across you, which is I was on Instagram and just kind of floating around and I saw a video of you at a printer, and it happened to be the same printer that we use for all of our clients. And you had the microphone inside of probably like a Chick-fil-A box, maybe.
McRib. It was a vintage McRib box.
And you were doing a little presentation and talking about the process you were going through. And I just was fascinated. So I hurried up and I followed you. I started stalking you. And I think I probably sent you 15 emails please be on my podcast. Please be on my podcast.
Here we are.
So here we are.
So be gentle,
Yeah. This is going to be fascinating. I mean, I think that a lot of our listeners, they are self-publishers. And so they've kind of experienced some of these things in one way, shape, or form. But then a lot of the listeners are just curious. So they're curious about how other people do it. And that is what this season, it's called Food for Thought. This season is all about different paths to a published product. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Before we dig too far in, I'd love for you just to give everyone, your Cliff Notes. Just tell everyone who you are and what you do.
All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm Gary from Brooklyn, New York. I'm mostly a food journalist. My background mostly involves taking photographs, but I added some writing in there, over the years. And I'm a lifelong, McDonald's consumer. When I was a kid, McDonald's was like a treat that you got if you had good grades. And then in college, I would eat McDonald's, the dollar menu, double cheeseburgers and chicken fajitas from the West 4th Street and Broadway McDonald's across from NYU. And so survived on that. And then, as I went overseas as a journalist, I would start eating these international menu items. And I started seeing some things that were quite curious. And I thought to myself, well, why isn't anyone documenting this? This is the largest restaurant chain in the world, right? And so I said, no, maybe I can do it because I'm a food journalist. Why not? And this could be fun. And so, yeah, I started doing it. And over the years, collected enough content to start working on McAtlas, right? Which you now hold in your hands, and we have copies, right?
No one's gonna see this, but we are holding up our copies, and I will definitely take a picture of myself. And maybe I can coax Gary into a photo at the end with the tier list and our books. Well, those are some core memories, right? Like just from like when you were young and then all through travels. I mean, I think, you have your career in journalism and, photography and writing, like all of that, like those are two of the key components, obviously, to creating a product. When you first came up with that idea, when was the moment where you're like, let me do this? This is my project. I am meant to do this.
A couple of years ago, I think it was in 2018 or 2019, I was sitting in a McDonald's in Marrakesh, Morocco, during Ramadan. And I keep the fast when I'm in a Muslim country during Ramadan. And I started tabbing around the screen and I saw a core meal, which is iftar in most other Muslim countries. It's the meal that they take to break the fast, the daily fast. And they had all these like local items in there, like chibakia, which is like a honeyed pastry, and then dates, harira soup, milk yogurt drink. And I just said, this is so different. This is crazy. And I've never seen anyone ever talk about this. And so because it was also a religious time of year, I was like, okay, this is a sign. Here we go. Like I am the person who is meant to document this stuff and like share it with the rest of the world. And I think it can open up some eyes. Right, because I think there are certain assumptions that people make about what food needs to be around the world, and also about what these fast food chains serve around the world. And I said, no, we can shatter all of that stuff with one project. And so I started building an Excel spreadsheet and kind of figuring out like which items were where and how I was going to be able to document all of it. And yes, it took a couple of years, but we eventually did it, right?
Yeah. So you start out with that story, like in the beginning of the book, I believe. That's like one of the first moments in the book. And I was just fascinated with all of the, localization of the menu and how that kind of came about. It was almost like, if they want to hold some footing and some ground in these other countries, they really needed to acclimate, and they were able to do that. And I thought it was just fascinating of the different types of food products that they have all around the country, which I never knew until I started stalking you and I started seeing all the fun photos, and I'm like, wait a second, this is really cool. But from what I understand, like McDonald's didn't actually, like, you reached out to all of that. You reached out, you tried to get some support even on that side, but no bueno on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're the largest company in the world, and the number of people that must be trying to reach out to them, it must be endless, right? And so I think, I know I try to reach out to them to attend the worldwide conference, a worldwide convention, which is a thing they have every 2 years, where franchisees from all over the world gather. And I said, well, you can start interviewing people there and kind of figuring out the game there. And they wouldn't have it. And then I try to go to a couple of other things. They have an archive in Chicago that would have been awesome to tap into. No response. And so, which is fine because like they're such a large company. They have open stores everywhere around the world. Yeah, you can just show up and start eating and photographing the items, and then they also have like a rich history all over the internet. And there are many people who used to work there that are willing to share their stories. And so, as a journalist, like you're sometimes told no, or you're just ignored altogether. But if you really want to tell the story, you really want to work on the project, there are ways to do it. And in this instance, I had to go around the world and photograph all the stuff myself. That was like pretty much a key part of it because there was no participation, which is fine. It's a great excuse to travel around the world and fill your belly up.
Yeah, but how did that go? Like, I mean, I know you had just even mentioned a little earlier, you had a spreadsheet, but this is a massive undertaking. So even though it may have started out as like just this small kernel of an idea, at some point you had to really be strategic about how you approach this. Like, how did you manage all those moving pieces, understanding where you wanted to go, how you were going to get there, like where all these locations were? Is it easy? Was it not? Like, were you lonely? Like, I have all these questions.
I mean, I'm a crazy person, obviously, but like I feel like anyone who does a book is kind of a crazy person, right? Because it's such an undertaking, especially once you get into it, you realize, oh wait, there are way more moving parts than I expected, and certainly in this case, that was true. It really started off in spreadsheets, and Google was my friend, Google Maps was my friend. They have this great technology now where you can just like kind of drop a pin anywhere on the map and start looking around. And so I was able to go to a city, type in McDonald's, and then you see all the McDonald's and you just start clicking rapidly between the things. And then you see if there's anything interesting. And if you see an interesting building, you go, okay, what's the address? Let's see if there was any history there. Let's see if there's a story to tell, right? And so over the course of many weeks, many months, I kind of built out a spreadsheet of all the places that were cool to visit. And then you kind of cross-reference that with research about, okay, which one of these menus has items that I can use to storytell, right? Because what I say is like, even though McDonald's is kind of the subject of the book, it's not really a book about McDonald's. It's a book about like foodways and like food culture around the world. And we're just using the most popular food chain to tell that story, right? So someone in America can relate to it and go, huh, okay, like I understand now, instead of showing them maybe a local thing that they would have never considered if there wasn't like a Golden Arches stamp somewhere on the packaging, right? And so in a way, it's kind of like a Trojan horse for that kind of storytelling.
Yeah. Well, it worked on me because I was so enamored with it as I was going through. I even was showing my son, he's 18. I'm like, check this book out. And he's like, oh my God, it looks like a hamburger. And I'm like, but it is. I'm like, this is a McDonald's hamburger. And he's like, get out. And then I like started showing him the book and he was like, this is crazy. And I'm like, this is the world, like this is the world. This is what you can experience when you travel, when you get outside of, the four, corners of your own little land. Like this is where you can explore all these things, and things are different everywhere. And McDonald's is just one of those pieces of the cog, right? That, they learned how to acclimate, and they've had to, otherwise they will not be in different areas.
Totally correct. And also, like, I feel that one of the big points that I was trying to get across with the book, everything you mentioned, of course, but then a lot of people actually have a perception of foreign food that needs to be it needs to be trapped in this like stasis, this like post World War II, like post colonial, like, okay, like we need Japanese food to only be like sushi and like ramen, or like we need Chinese food to be a certain way. Otherwise it's not authentic. I'm like, I'm sorry. If you travel around the world in the year of our Lord 2025, you will see that like food has evolved. Food has not stopped changing. And a big part of that are these chains, and like the speed of the world is increasing. And so people are eating faster, people are getting around. So they need in these more mobile forms. They can't be doing bowls of rice. Rice now comes in burger form, right? With rice patties, or it comes in like a paper container with all the ingredients on top. And so these are the things that I kind of want to show people and kind of like change their mindset about like what constitutes foreign food, right? Like it's not, Italian food isn't just like pizza and pasta, right? There's like all these things, and like some of the biggest chains in the world thrive there. I mean, they have a local chain, Bergi, that was there before McDonald's, right? They had burger chain there, and pizza is a fast food. So like we can't really judge this stuff in that way, right? We just kind of go out into the world with like an open mind, open belly, open mouth, and just like enjoy all of it, right?
Yeah. And I think it was also fascinating too, just to see the different locations. And as I was perusing, we have one out here in Garden City. I'm out here on Long Island, and I saw it in the book. I was like, oh, I wonder if, and I was flipping through and I'm like,
wait, Denton House? You live right by Denton House. Oh my goodness, that one's legendary.
And like, so I was like, that was one of the pictures I showed my son. I opened it up. I'm like, look, Nathan. And he was like, oh my God, we used to take all of the kids there after daycare. And because it had a great ball pit, it was huge. And we knew that we could see them. They could run around. It was beautiful. It was like the prettiest McDonald's that I've ever seen. And so anyways, I saw it in the book and I was like, that's all, we made the book.
And that's such an important McDonald's, because I feel like, after that McDonald's and after the Gore House in Freeport, I don't know if you read the blurb, but like after those McDonald's like happened, other people, especially on Long Island, and I don't want to stereotype people on Long Island, but like,
I'm not originally from here, so you will not offend. So
people got to yapping and they managed to get their local McDonald's to look more like homes.
Yeah.
And look more like, they belonged in the community and not like the mansard roofed buildings that were being built in the 80s and 90s. And so I thought that part was super interesting. And so, it's not a gimmick, some of these fancier McDonald's, right? It very much is a result of communities fighting for localization.
Yeah.
Even in the architecture, not just in our menu.
Yeah. I was talking to one of my employees and she's in Jersey and they're going through something right now with McDonald's in their local area because they want to fight for it to look a certain way. And it's the same thing. I was like, Aaron, I'm like, here, show them that it can be done. Like we have proof all over the world. Like it does not have to look like the typical McDonald's. I saw the one that is the UFO, that the one that's shaped like a UFO. I think it's.
Oh yeah, I mean everything in Roswell, New Mexico is UFO themed. Like their mailboxes, their lampposts.
Wonderful. Like I totally have to go there. And then there was one that had the it had turquoise arches, which I thought that was.
Oh yeah, Sedona.
Yeah, I
you
thought that
can't
was
have
really
glowing arches. You can't have glowing arches in Sedona. It's a building code thing, and it needs to be like this adobe colored exterior.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So I feel like this product, this book that you've created and your photography, it just makes it all like, just like you said, this was something you had to photograph. It's not like you could go and pull things from the archives. Mm-hmm. And I also think that also just adds to it. It has this kind of vintage retro feel to it throughout, and the paper and everything, all those aesthetic choices I thought were really fun. And the design, it's very, I would say, simplistic, and yet so it allows like the content, like it's very easy to read and all of that. So I know when I got the copy, I was really excited and how it's produced. And like I said, that was basically how I came across you, is through the printer. But at a certain point, you obviously needed to go from the content gathering, whether it was with your photos and the travel and all of that, and then you had to kind of move into, how am I going to produce this? Like, how did you approach that part of it? I'm assuming that since you come from a publishing background, that you've worked with, industry professionals, it was a little bit easier for you. But how did you end up kind of moving forward on that front?
So yeah, I am very lucky in that, like with 20 years working in and around media, I've picked up Photoshop, InDesign. I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but like enough to get around those applications, or at least learn very quickly via YouTube video. But you mentioned the design and the layout. I worked with a great team of designers, Associate Studio, who came up with a number of cover concepts, including one that said, hey, maybe he'll be crazy and say yes to the one that looks like a burger.
Yeah.
And then so they had a concept drawn up, and then we worked together to like hone in on like what parts needed to be part of the cover, right? And so, it was a collaborative effort at the end, but they're the ones who said, hey, like let's make this really crazy, right? Because it is an independently published project. And you can get away with a lot more, because I think when you work within the bounds of traditional publishing, which is incredible, by the way, like traditional publishing is essential and they do a lot of the stuff for you. But if you're working on your own weird little art projects and you want it to look super unique, then you can get away with making your book look like a burger, right? You can do a lot of wacky things that you would not normally be able to get away with in traditional publishing. So yeah, they kind of threw that out there as one of the 3 cover designs. And I kind of knew what I wanted for the inside, because, McDonald's started in like the 60s, 50s, what have you, came up in that era where you had this like Massimo Vignelli design look, like New York City subway, like that kind of thing, with a lot of Helvetica. And so what font did we end up using? We did not use Helvetica. We used
like Universe?
No, we use like Neue Haas Grotesque, which is like the original Helvetica, like the typeset version of Helvetica before it got digitized. So yeah, they were really smart about it. They did a lot of research, kind of pulling from old things from that era, and I just kind of went, okay, it's like a kind of catalog, right? They show you like 50 pages of a deck, and then you go, okay, let's go with this, and then like let's start molding it together, right? Let's just start saying, okay, which things do we like? Which things do we don't like? And then, yeah, it kind of came together that way on the design front. And then I worked with a consultant who pointed me in the direction of copy editors, kind of a project editor, so to help mold the writing, right? Like I had an idea of like the arguments, about localization, globalization, that sort of stuff. So all the stuff that we've discussed so far. But, all that stuff needs to be refined. Otherwise, it's just like one person in their head sitting in Williamsburg. It's not
dreaming about McDonald's.
Exactly. You have some blind spots, right? And so editors help you kind of reveal things that you didn't think about, like lines of thought, so on and so forth. And so I hired a bunch of people that you normally would get, from a publisher, from a traditional publisher. And that's kind of like one of the advantages of working with a traditional publisher is that you get paired up with people who work on projects like yours. But, when you're doing it independently, you can either do it alone, but if you wanted to turn out somewhat professionally or whatever, if you want to call it, it's good to bring in other sets of eyes. So, I had a good number of sets of eyes on it, copy editor, indexer, right? In case you wanted to, find stuff. And that was probably about a 6-month time frame. All that stuff was happening around the same time, the design stuff, finishing up the writing, copy editing, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the people that can't see this again, I'm going to explain the beauty that is this book. So on the cover, it looks like a burger, right? And so you have like the sesame seeds that are on here, and it feels like they have like a slight emboss to them, or like there's like some kind of spot UV on them as well. So that
That's what it is. Yeah.
They have like a little sheen so you can feel it. But then I splurged for the deluxe edition, which comes with a little box, which I love. And because it makes it even more special. So I'm going to explain this. So what's really cool is the edges it looks like they're spray painted. So they're spray painted. Is that correct? And they are spray painted in the different color tonalities of a burger. So you have lettuce, tomato, mustard, or cheese. That would be cheese. Lettuce, tomato, cheese. You've got, the burger itself, and then you have the bun. So it's very cool on the edges. And then it also has a green ribbon, so you can sort of move your place around if you want. So I had to explain it because I just think it's just it turned out very beautiful and unique, like you said. And just like you said, that is one of the things when it comes to self-publishing, you do at least have a little bit more say, and a lot more say in how that end product looks. So I think it's super fun. So like I said, I have the deluxe version. Where did that idea come from? Was it something that you guys had talked about, or curious?
I was looking at, so they came up with this cover concept that looked like a burger. And so, but when you sort of put books in stores, you kind of need spine text, which kind of like blows up the whole like striping of the burger on the spine. We were kind of discussing, okay, is there a way to make it so there isn't any text on the spine? And I was advised that every bookstore is going to kill me. And like even regular people who store their books in a normal way are going to try to kill me. And so but I really wanted to see a version of the book that didn't have any text at all, right? Like burger in its purest form.
Yes.
And so that was the compromise that we made. We printed a small number of them, of the ones that you have, that were, pure burger, no text. All the text is on a sleeve, just to see how it would work out. And I don't think we're going to make more of those.
It's cool. I
love them.
I thought
I think it's
like a box. Like I thought it was kind of like the burger box. So to me, I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
I think it's cool to leave that as like a limited edition for this first print run. And then, if we happen to do a future one, who knows, right? Like maybe that it'll only come in that format, right? But I'm also like very happy with how the regular edition came out, right? Because the text on the spine isn't as distracting as I originally thought. I mean, it's weird, right? You look at a lot of this stuff in rendered format and, on a screen, and it is completely different in person, in use, right? When it's sitting on a table, what have you. And I actually grew to love the regular design more and more. As time progressed. And I said, it's actually pretty bold looking, and it's like pretty distinct, and like people will like it. And so, I love both, honestly. And so super happy with how it turned out.
Yeah. And so was there any moment in time that you felt like you just kind of at that moment, like you just wanted to give up at all?
I mean, no. In order to work on the project, I spent my own money, right? I had no collaborations with any brands. And so it was purely a work of like journalism. And so in that way, I had to spend my own money. And so from almost the start, I had already invested a large sum of money because I started off going to the Middle East in order to start collecting more because I thought, okay, we have Morocco already, and we have a bunch of other small ones, but like the Middle East seems like it's very different, right? So let's go there culturally. And so those plane tickets aren't cheap. Those hotels aren't cheap. And so at any given point, I said, well, you can give up now and lose X amount, or you can just put more money in. It's like it's the worst kind of gambling. But at least you're gambling on yourself. You're gambling on yourself, right? And so it kind of works out, right? But yeah, at any given point, like when I was like $50,000 in, I was like, oh my God, like I would lose out on that money, right? So what's another X, Y, or Z? Like when I was super tired or like super burnt out, because yeah, it is a ton of travel. I would not advise for any person to repeat this process, especially at the speed that I did it. Like, I did most of the work in 3 years. And so 55 countries.
You went to what, 50 countries? Is that about right? Or
55, 56, depending. I don't remember how many I eventually left out. Is some I eventually said, okay, you don't really fit into the grand scheme of things. But yeah, in some of those places you have to go to multiple times. France, for example, multiple trips. Hong Kong as like a hub and also as like a pretty active market. China, multiple times. Japan, of course. And so, yeah, those are not short trips from New York.
No, they're not short. Were you able to like piggyback any kind of other work off of those trips, or was it purely just, your project?
Yeah, it was purely the project. The funny part is, this project had been going on for years before the pandemic.
Yeah.
But as a piggyback type of situation where, I would travel somewhere and it's like, okay, let's tack on to McDonald's at the end of the trip. Right. But then the pandemic happened. You couldn't travel for like a year and a half. And then I kind of realized, well, I kind of want to, do this project and get it done without like St. Peter being my editor. And so, I had to start taking trips just for the project alone, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I put my foot on the pedal and then just went forward and said, okay, this will be worth it at the end. And yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah,
it was worth it for sure.
So do you have like a few ultimate faves that like you would make a trip to go back just for that special item that they have on their menu?
Oh yeah, totally. South Korea. I went there for the egg bulgogi burger. I had already photographed it once, but I was just in Japan and I said, I need to go through and photograph the building. Yeah. I did not have to add that building to the book. And so I said, okay, I'm going to add that to the book, and got an opportunity to eat the egg bulgogi burger again. A lot of the food around the world is much tastier than we have here. And so, I mean, I'm going to get back on the road soon because the story is not done, right? Like it is a constantly evolving company. And like, I don't think you ever start traveling around and work on a project like this if you're only going to do the book. I think you need to have a real love for the subject matter and the food in order to kind of jump into it. And so I don't think that ends with the publication of the book. I think I'm going to continue going out there and trying out the menu item.
Reporting live from McDonald's, your local McDonald's. Well, I love that you can even have a beer at some of them. I think that would be amazing, especially since McDonald's is always something that people go to after a night out. They're like,
yeah,
let's go. Okay, just have one more beer. That would be nice.
Yeah, in Eastern Europe for sure, because I think culturally it's less of an issue there. It's McDonald's is certainly a family restaurant everywhere, but I mean that's part of family eating.
Yeah,
over there, I suppose. And so, yeah, you can get the local beer pretty much in any McDonald's east of Austria. It starts at Austria, then it goes.
That makes sense. You were able to go to the printer, which is how I, again, came across you and your project. And you got to go there and be on press, which is also another awesome experience because not a lot of self-publishers get to do that in general, even when it comes to the traditionally published. I mean, usually it's the production manager that goes, and maybe a designer will get to go if they're special. But that looked like a great experience for you to just see how the soup is made, or what do they say?
Yeah, I feel like for most people, by the time they like get to that part of self-publishing, they don't have any money left to like fly overseas to go to where it's printed, right? And so, I was lucky enough to, have a couple of pennies left, and miles, right? The miles accumulated from all the travel. And so I was able to like go there and like go on press and actually stand there for about 5 days as they printed the entire book, which was super cool
Yeah.
to see. That the factory that we went to prints so many books. I saw some really legendary ones that I'm not supposed to name.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. We're just
but
flying life away. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I want to be invited back for, future projects. But yeah, a lot of the books that people enjoy were printed at that factory. And so it was amazing to be connected with a factory of that caliber. And it was super fun to work with them over there. Whenever we took our lunch breaks, we would eat some local fast food. They really wanted me to eat like, traditional Chinese food.
Yeah.
And I said, nah, like, let's go for it. I want to see what the Burger King is like, or I want to see the local KFC. I want to see what new menu items there are. And so we had a blast doing that. They got tired of me by the 5th day because they said, we're tired of eating this fat. Like, we want our traditional food.
Like, we want real food. Well, that's awesome. So then this book is produced, and now you obviously have to wait, like, what is it, 3 months for it to arrive, or through 2.5?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The shipping is, people never really realize how long it is really going to take. It's on a container, and then you have to get it to the States, and you have to figure out how to get it from this to that. What was all of that like? What was the plan once they arrived here to the States?
First of all, that it is the most anxious 3 months that you will ever experience in your life as like a self-published author, because like you've done all the work. There's nothing else you can do.
No.
And it's in the hands of the logistics gods.
Yeah.
And
this is how much I stalked you. So I know on Instagram you had the little boat, and I do this with the client. No, I do this with my clients. I send them screenshots of like, here's your boat, and like, here's the name. This is how you can track it. And that is a thing, tracking of the boat.
Absolutely. And so one of the big things, and I consider this all because this is my first self-published book. This is tuition to attend self-publishing university. All right. And so I think that everyone who was advising me or whatever thought that I just wanted the cheapest possible solution.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so, but knowing now, I would have maybe picked a different route. So they put me on a boat, right? A shipping container boat that makes every single stop along the way to the port of New York, and then like does drop-offs and pickups. And so it went up the coast of China. The factory, the printing plant was in China, like most or many books are. And so it went up the coast of China, but then got stuck in a storm waiting to go into the port of Shanghai. And like, so I aged about 10 years, during that week. And then because we were also trying to beat a certain deadline for getting this stuff completely set for the holidays, right? And so that was why we kind of like rushed a little bit toward the end, especially on the factory front. We stood there for like 18 hours, sometimes 15 hours, in order to get the book printed faster.
Right.
In order to make certain deadlines for getting the book to the United States. And then it also stopped in Busan in Korea. It went down the coast, the American coast, you had Los Angeles, and then it goes to the Panama Canal, makes a stop there. And then for some reason, it was like going slower up the eastern coast because maybe it didn't have like priority to dock or something like that. All these things. Meanwhile, I was watching these boats that went directly from Shenzhen to the port of New York. And I said, wait, like, could I have paid like $500 more? Right. And like got on like exactly. Even $1,000. Like, I would have happily paid a little bit more money. And so that's probably one of the biggest things, because I spent the maximum amount of time on water, and like I can watch like the years of my life just ticking off as like, I have like lines in my face now. Like, I have probably 50% less hair as a result of that entire process. But it finally landed. I think it was like the week before Thanksgiving. And then naturally there were some other shenanigans involved. But then it's super exciting when you finally get the alert that, hey, the truck is on land, or the truck is at the warehouse, right?
Yeah.
And the warehouse is in the border of New Jersey and New York. And I was able to like drive over there, and then you see the pallets of books, and it's like the most amazing feeling, right? Because like, okay, it's real, right? It is on American soil. You've paid a maximum dollar. And now comes the most important or the most difficult part of the process.
Yeah.
Which is figuring out how to get that book out there, right?
So what did you do? Like, did you have Did you have a launch plan? Had you been, like since it took so much time to get over, did you have time to like go around to different locations that you knew you wanted it to be stocked? How did you, because you are in like Kitchen Arts and Letters, you're in like a bunch of other like small local stores, but then I know it's on Amazon now. So what was what was the path to get you into the different stores that you're in?
Yeah, so I had a consultant who, had self-published before. And so I was able to kind of utilize her skill set in order to, get placed in the stores. And, these are like mom and pop shops, and they compete against like, the big online retailers. And so somehow we were able to like allow them to have like the first holiday season, like unobstructed from the from the online retailers, because like some of the press hits weren't really lining up. And so it didn't kind of behoove us to have it kind of like be online yet. And so it was like a project for January, right? Because press hits will move books no matter what the season. And so like that was a January project. And so, yeah, it was like a lot of like boots on the ground, like just bringing it to restaurants and leaving it on shelves, or like leaving it on like the table in my barber shop and hoping people found it and said, oh yeah, this would make a great Christmas gift. Yeah. So I did that. It was really fun because, there's so much technology out there now to help you do these things that it almost feels like unromantic. Like it becomes like so digital. Yeah. And to have like that month and a half where it was very much like, oh, boots on the ground. I am personally like wrapping up books. And
you were schlepping them along.
To UPS store. Yeah. I became friends with the UPS guy, like they felt bad for me and ordered copies. Because they said, hey, you're out here hustling. We love it. And we love what you're working on. And so, yeah, it was very much like a community effort. Yeah. And once we got into January, all those bookstores were able to like kind of sell out of that holiday stock, and we were able to kind of reset. Obviously, at some point as a bookseller, you do have to be on the big websites. And so, we moved some copies over there, and, now we're trying to find that like good balance of like keeping the warmth of being like a self-published person while also being able to automate some of that process.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And it's been fun to watch because I know there were certain things that I would see that you posted, like, a lot of the local retailers, like they would post their top sales, right? And you were falling in there right along with, traditionally published products.
I had no idea how that happened.
I was like, yes, I was over here rooting for you, Gary. I was like, yes, this is what we want to see. And it can happen. And it's all about the momentum and rallying your community around the product, and just you showing up every day and the excitement that you have for it, just like the UPS people buying copies. It's infectious. and it matches their color scheme. They can carry it, and it's color coordinated. But yeah. And that is something that we tell a lot of our clients. So we do help our clients self-publish, and some of them, they choose that traditional distribution model, which is it gets them into the stores and, into all the .coms, but then they can get into, Barnes & Noble or whatever. But the thing is that we tell them, even if you're going to do that, you need to get people into the stores. And that was exactly what you did, especially for that first push. And I think that that's always so important. Like, you are telling them where to go. That's where you want to drive the sales. And it helps those communities and those bookstores to get the sales as well. So it's like win-win on that side.
And here's the thing. It's like, those bigger stores, if you have a good enough product, I mean, I think that eventually they'll just come to you anyway, no matter how you distribute the book. Yeah. Right. And so like the most important part is like these mom and pops, right? We want them to survive. Yeah. Right. And so like building a good relationship, a good community with them is like super important. And like, I feel like you read these news articles about these books that sell like 1 million copies or like 2.1 million copies in 1 week. That's very unrealistic. Yes. And like books are a very long-term play. This is going to be like my personal brand for the next year plus, right? It's a legacy. And so we have time for all of that. And so if you have that like good community relationship going and that like kind of feel good, like, we're scrappy and like that attitude from the start, then I think, that other stuff comes a little bit easier instead of like just kind of pushing it all out there right away and just hoping to like fish as many sales as possible. It is one strategy for sure. I don't knock it, but it's not the one that I wanted to use. And so I'm very happy with how things have started out, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, how they're unfolding. So the other piece I wanted to ask about is that you've had some really great press as well. And was that something, again, is that tapping into your own community and your connections, or has that also happened very organically as well?
Both, right? Because I'm one of them.
You are.
So I think there are certain outlets and certain
Blown item. Let's
Yeah.
see.
I mean, that's how the game works, right?
Yeah.
Like normally you pay a PR person, and PR people are extremely useful in this case. So if you don't have those relationships, it's worth considering, because those PR people have relationships with the reporters that end up writing those stories and like giving you placements, right? I'm very fortunate to like be in the media world, so kind of understand the flow of news cycles, what have you, finding a hook, right, that hasn't been used yet, holding back some photos for certain folks and then giving certain other folks certain photos. So all that stuff, all that game playing, that helped with getting some of the press. And then some of it was just, naturally, people finding me, like CNN, for example, like heard about me. And we were able to make that work. I mean, I didn't pitch them.
Yeah.
I did not know the reporter or beforehand. And so though did find out afterwards that there are like mutual friends.
Sure.
Right. And so there are so many ways to go about it, but so long as you like kind of believe in your own project, which I hope everyone does,
Yeah.
it'll come. Right. And it's important to be patient, because there are so many different news cycles, and it doesn't all have to happen in the traditional way where you get like the Grub Street diet,
Right.
and then like the New York Times like Sunday routine, and then like all the usual hits, and then like the New York Times book review, right? Like it doesn't have to happen in that order, right? And like someone might be writing about you like months from now, because they have an understanding that there are so many people out there who have no idea about this independently published project.
Yeah.
Right.
We were talking about that earlier too. Like it is like this is like the tip of the iceberg. It hasn't even really it's only been a couple months. It's only been since November.
2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 months and change. And like I've gotten some, pretty good press, and I look at the numbers on the website or whatever, and I see like it's not that many people who have visited the website, right, or read about the book. And so, yeah, sure, a good number of those people who read those news articles have no interest in the book, right?
Right.
But I think it goes to show that like maybe not that many people read those news articles, right? You may think in your little bubble that you've done the maximum.
Yes.
Okay, I got the Today Show, or I got all this coverage, and like like CBS Sunday Morning, that's the gold standard in publishing, right? Like getting on CBS Sunday Morning, and like you feel like you've maxed out. No, there are so many people out there that don't know about your projects, and we're in this bubble. And I think there's always more opportunity, right? Like now there's book talk, right? Now you just pump content out on social media and see what sticks and what doesn't. Like it is endless. And so you can always help your project's viability going forward. And there is no timeline, right? There are some authors, right? They write about these authors who are, living in a trailer in like Oklahoma, and like, working 2 jobs, and then like KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, like, romantasy novels. And then all of a sudden their 5th one goes viral and they end up becoming multimillionaires. Like this is a thing that happens.
It happens.
And so like it could happen to you.
It happens. Like there was a girl even like on TikTok, she did a shadow work journal. And
yes, I remember reading that article.
It blew up. And so now she has like a 3-book deal. She's in Target. She's in all the, they redid it. And, and she sold, if you think about this, she sold 1 million copies as a KDP. Yeah. That just like
put the emoji on the screen.
Yeah. It blows your mind. Like she sold 1 million copies, and that was before somebody picked her up, like that is insane, but it happens. And even one of my friends, she's in publicity, and she's like, she did a cookbook like 7 or 8 years ago. And even now the book is still ranking on Amazon because she talks about it. She's very strategic about the timing, and when she like reaches out to local press, like she can talk about, and it's a cocktail book, so she can, leverage that throughout the year with different topics. And so it just keeps the book alive. I mean, if you're going to put time, energy, money, all of that into it, this becomes part of your legacy to let it fall to the wayside it's not an option.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Good or bad. I mean, McDonald's is part of my like persona now. And so, well, we'll ride with
It's in your DNA, I think. It's definitely in your blood work, I think. Like it's probably
They say it's like, they say for people who work for the company that like ketchup runs through your veins or something like that. I'm not sure I love that, but you know, here we are.
Yeah. So any surprises that you've had in this? Anything that just really surprised you through the process as you were kind of going through everything?
You know, I think because I enlisted in all these consultants, they prepared me for a lot of the things that you would normally surprise people.
Yeah.
The thing that I was not prepared for is like how many different disasters can happen, like mini disasters, right? It's not like my books all burned down, but like, you know, with logistics along the way. And like, even once it's on the ground, like how long like USPS is going to hold on to a media mail package before it even tracks. So you have people like emailing you like 2 days later thinking it's Amazon. It's like, no, like it got dropped off yesterday. It takes a day for the warehouse to like, you know, send it. And then like USPS might decide, hey, you know,
we're taking
the cheap
today.
Yeah, this is the cheap one. This is the cheap way to send a book. And so we're just going to do it at the end of the week or next week. And so customer service, the amount of customer service required, I think is probably the answer you were looking for.
Yeah.
In terms of like the one thing that I'm just like completely shocked by, because we do live in this like on demand country now where like, if I want a car, I can just call an Uber. If I want anything, Amazon, and you can get it in 2 days. Right. And so I think, you know, there are a lot of people out there who still don't understand that, like, you know, this is a small operation. I'm like a guy sitting in Brooklyn, you know, I might have a warehouse, but they're a small operation also, right? Because it's not that many books. And so, you know, everything works at a slightly slower speed, and to like, you know, please have grace.
Yeah.
For some people, like that is just not in their vocabulary. And so dealing with that in your own graceful way is very important, because ultimately they're interested in your projects, which is like super cool. Like how lucky, even if they might be a little annoying about the shipping, like how lucky are we to have like random people in parts of the country or even in other countries interested in our work, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like being able to like, you know, take a breather and and like treat everything with like, you know, kids gloves on is like super important. And so I'm still learning. But I think that like surprised me a little bit, and so I'm adjusting to it. But it's working out.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you've been having fun the whole way, so that's what I find inspiring. But Gary, I know you are a busy man. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I know a lot of people are really going to love hearing your path. Is there anything that's coming up in the future that you want to just give a plug, or do you want to let people know where they can find you and the book?
I think I'm taking a rest for a while, so nothing new on the horizon. But if people want to go to mcatlas.com, you know, you can get the book there, find out more about the project. And, you know, we have a list of stockists. So if you want to support your local bookstore, that's possible. If you want it in 2 days, that's also possible. And so, yeah, exactly. We cover all our bases, right? And so please come and say hi.
Yeah. Thanks again, Gary. It was great to meet you and chat with you.
Great chatting. Thank you.